Hey there, can we have a real heart-to-heart moment? You know, not all goodbyes come wrapped in final words or dramatic endings. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones that are never spoken out loud. No explanations, no closure, just silence. A slow drift apart. One day you're sharing your dreams, your fears, your heart with someone, and the next it's like they've disappeared from your life, like they were never even there. And that silence, it's deafening. In those quiet spaces we wrestle with emotions. We replay every memory, every conversation, wondering what went wrong. Was it something I said? Was it something I did? And the hardest part? Not knowing. Being left alone with nothing but thoughts and echoes of what used to be. But here's what I've learned through those silent goodbyes. Even in the absence of words, God speaks. When someone leaves your life without explanation, it feels like a door slammed shut with no warning. You're left standing there, staring at that closed door, waiting for it to open again. Waiting for them to come back and explain. Waiting for closure that may never come. And in that waiting, it's easy to feel abandoned. Not just by the person who left, but sometimes even by God. Why would you let this happen, God? Why would you let me get so close only to have it ripped away? I've been there. Maybe you have too. God doesn't waste anything, not even the painful, silent goodbyes. Sometimes, people we thought were forever were only meant to be temporary. They were never meant to be our whole story, just a chapter. And while that chapter might be beautiful, it doesn't mean it was meant to last forever. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." That includes relationships. Some people come to teach us, to challenge us, to help us grow. Not everyone is meant to stay. And that's okay, because while people may come and go, God never leaves. His love, His presence, His promises, they're constant, unchanging, eternal. Here's the part that brings me peace. God sees the things we don't. He knows the hearts of people, even when they don't show their true selves. Maybe that person wasn't meant to walk with you into the next season. Maybe their absence is God's protection, even if it doesn't feel like it. But I know what you're thinking. What about the memories? What about the love I gave? What do I do with all of that? You don't have to forget it. You don't have to pretend it didn't matter. It did matter. But it's also okay to let go, to release the need for answers. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come from the other person. It comes from God. It comes from trusting that even though you don't have all the answers, He does. And His plans for you are greater than anything or anyone you've lost. The silence after a goodbye can feel like a void. You know what I've found? It's in that silence where God's voice becomes the loudest. When everything else falls away, that's when you can really hear Him. That's when He whispers to your heart, "I'm still here. I've never left you, and I never will." Psalm 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That's not just a comforting thought, it's a promise. When you're feeling abandoned, when the silence feels unbearable, God is closer than you think, holding your heart in His hands. While you might not understand why things happened, you can trust that God is using even this to shape you, to strengthen you, to prepare you for what's next. Because His plans for you, they're not just good, they're perfect. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That includes your relationships, the people who walked away, the goodbyes that were never said. So what do you do now? You take a deep breath. You feel the sadness, the confusion, the loss, but you don't stay there. You bring those feelings to God, the hurt, the unanswered questions, the silent spaces, and let Him fill them with His peace. You stop waiting for closure from someone who may never give it. You start finding closure in the one who never left, who knew this goodbye was coming and had a plan to bring beauty from ashes, the one who loves you more deeply than anyone. Eventually, peace will find its way into spaces where words once lived. Memories will still be there, but they won't haunt you. Silence will exist, but it won't feel loud. You'll know that even in quiet, God was always speaking. The people who left, just a chapter. Your story isn't over. With God as the author, the next chapter will be more beautiful. Don't be afraid to turn the page. The best is still ahead.